Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at relative pronouns in French and how they work. They're quite challenging, so if you feel at all confused by these or frustrated, it's a completely logical thing because they're not very tangible. Usually, like if we're studying like colors or foods or clothes, like it's really, you can see it, you can understand it quite easily because it's right there. Relative pronouns are so out there and they're just really horrible, so don't feel like you're not smart with this. It really is like a very complex kind of thing that is super out there. So anyways, the nice thing though with relative pronouns is that generally speaking it's just building on qui and que, and so if you can master the idea of qui and que, then think of all of like the lequel, laquelle, lesquels, duquel, all that weird stuff. Think of those as just exceptions to qui and que, if that kind of makes sense. So the foundation is qui and que, and if you don't understand the foundation of qui and que, you need to spend most of your time there first before you can even move on. The other thing is that with relative pronouns, generally speaking, they often replace words that in English we don't even necessarily use, but we should be using. So for example, I might say like the dog that is blue, and in French like le chien qui est bleu, and that works. But if I were to say, for example, the girl I like, I should still be saying the girl who I like or the girl that I like. But in English, I often just drop it. But in French, I still have to have that word. So instead of saying like la fille j'aime, which we want to say the girl I like, la fille j'aime. We just not want to have one word in French, it's one word in English, and when it doesn't match up, then we get frustrated. So if we actually spoke better English, our French would actually be easier because then we would have all of the words that we should have to make it complete. So anyways, with relative pronouns, we have like, let's say different levels of complexity. So the very basis, we have qui and que, which are basically saying like that or which and who. And so as a general rule, if the blank is followed by a pronoun or a person word, then you write the word que. So if I were to say the girl who I like, so la fille que j'aime, then because I have je, let me actually just show you here. Sorry, so the minute I have a pronoun right here, a pronoun is just a person word. Let's just look at our little cheat sheet here, okay? The minute you have a person or a pronoun right here, then we use que. So we just simply put it here. So it's the girl who I like or the girl that I like, la fille que j'aime. This is just the basis. And again, like I remember when I was learning this for the first time, they were like, what is the subject of the sentence? And it was like, I have no idea. You're like, the girl, me, I don't know, I have no idea. So if you just simply look at what comes right after the blank, which people don't speak in blanks, so you're already like, this is stupid, but whatever. But if you're trying to say like the girl I like, and then even just as you're speaking, you translate the first part until you get to that word that you're like, oh no, I have to have a word for like who I like, and then you're like, well, what comes after who I? If it's I, then you're like, oh, pronoun. Okay, so the girl who I like. So again, our little cheat sheet here is the minute you have que, it goes with a person or a pronoun. But the minute over here you have qui, and the minute you have a verb, then use qui. So you just la fille qui est belle, the girl who is pretty, and this is the girl who I like, or the girl that is pretty, the girl that I like. We use kind of the same sort of idea. Let me go on to the next one. What can be kind of confusing for us is when we have the relative pronouns, we have ce que and we have ce qui. And so already you're thinking, well, what's wrong? Like, why can't I just use que and why can't I just use qui? Here's the difference. Let me just go back to show you here. There we are. So with this one, the noun is clear. We know exactly what it is we're talking about because it's right there. There's a noun, the girl. We know exactly the girl I like. In this one here, is when we don't know what the noun is yet. So for example, if this sentence is saying, we're trying to say the idea of what I like is pizza. Well, I don't yet know pizza, so I actually can't put anything in. So I have to assume, like if somebody just starts off the sentence and you're like, you know what I like? And you're like, no, I have no idea. Tell me. Think of it like that. If they're like, you know what I like? Because you have no idea, you actually can't connect it to a noun. And if there's no noun to connect it to, then you have to use either ce qui or ce que. So here they're saying something like what I like. And although we know they're saying pizza because it's written on the board, if someone just started saying, what I like is, you would know. So because you don't know, then you just simply have to use ce qui or ce que. But ce qui and ce que follow the same rules as here, okay? Whether it's ce qui is still followed by a verb, ce que is still followed by a person or pronoun. So I come back here to my example, and because it's a person here, I'm gonna use ce que, and there it goes. Ce que j'aime, c'est la pizza. What I like is pizza. Same thing with the next one. I'm trying to say again, like what is easy is yoga. I don't think yoga is easy. It's a small word. I could fit on the whiteboard there. So again, until I actually know the rest of the sentence, I'm just simply saying what is easy, and you're like, oh, what is easy? Tell me what is easy. Until we actually know, then again, I just follow my rule because remember, qui is followed by a verb, que is followed by a person. So again, I'm assuming this is not even here, and I've just got ce qui est facile, what is easy. Until we know what's easy, we have to use ce qui. Just so you're not thinking like, okay, ce qui and ce que always start off sentences. I want to show you too that they can also be in the middle of a sentence. So again, now we're hearing, I like what you're wearing. And so again, but we don't actually know what they're wearing. Like maybe they're wearing a dress, maybe it's trousers, maybe it's, I don't know, a muumuu. We don't know. Until we actually know, we have to use ce qui and ce que. So again, we're just going to follow the rule. Anytime we have que, it's followed by a pronoun or a person. Anytime we have qui, followed by a verb. So here we're saying, I like what you're wearing. And we want to say, j'aime que tu portes. Like we want to say that. I like, because in theory, I like what you wear. But because we actually don't know what it is, we need the ce. And it's like ce makes it magically like, they're saying like, I don't know. That's what the ce is. But if you translate it back now from French to English, literally it's like, I like this that you wear. So it's a little confusing. You're like, well, that actually doesn't even make sense. Well, in French it makes sense. In English, you're like, the translation is where it gets lost. But in French it works. It makes sense. So the next thing is you're saying, I like, let's say, what is happening in Mexico. Who knows what's happening in Mexico? But you like it. And so because we actually don't know what's happening in Mexico, maybe there's like a sale on vacations, who knows, you have to use ce qui. Because otherwise, if we actually knew what was happening, you could say, you could have the qui, okay? But we don't, which makes it ce qui. So the element of uncertainty, when the noun is unclear, that's when we have to use the ce qui and ce que. When the noun is clear, just qui and que. So the next relative pronoun that we have is the word où, which is where. And just so you guys remember, où on its own without the accent means or. So you might be like, oh, right, I remember this now. So the idea generally on its own, the word où, it means where. But when we use it as a relative pronoun, it can also mean when. And I had a student the other day in class, and he made a really good point. He's like, you know, it might be kind of confusing because you're trying to think of like where is a very physical location. But if you think of where as also where in time, then it makes sense. So for example, we'll say like the moment when I arrived, well, it's the moment in time when I arrived. Or if you say like lundi, le jour où je marche à l'école. So Monday is the day that I walk to school. Again, Monday, think of it just where in time, where in the week in time. And then you're like, okay, this actually, I can do this makes sense. So we want to say the moment when I arrive and the moment where I arrive and the problem too is that in English, we don't always follow the grammatical rules that we should follow. So we're kind of like loosey-goosey with the words that we use. So truly it's like the moment when, because moment is a time, but the moment where I arrive is sometimes maybe you might say that, who knows. So here it is, the park where I play, and on its, oh my gosh, look at this. I'm just gonna write it again. I don't even know what I'm doing here. So the park where I play, when we use where as meaning the English translation like where, où is where, we're okay with it. To us, they're like, this is not even an issue. The park where I play. That actually makes sense. So of all of the relative pronouns, où is probably your favorite. You just have to remember that can also mean when. Okay, that's kind of like the one little tricky thing. So here's our other little tricky ones, is we have the idea of don't. And it looks like literally the word don't, but there's no, like we don't use the apostrophe like we do in English, like it's not do not, it's just don't. Who knows where it came from? The idea of don't is basically qui and que, but complicated in that the minute you see a de, you have to use don't. So if you think of it like that, it's actually kind of manageable. Like you just generally use, like if it was like qui or que would go in here. But if you're like, oh, there's an expression that requires de, instantly it's don't. So think of it just like a little math thing, like if you have que and an expression that has a de, it becomes don't. And so where this is really challenging is that you then have to memorize a list of the expressions that take de. So I just have two expressions here. So one of them is to need. So the expression is avoir besoin de, literally to have the need of, or parler de, to talk about. And so in this case, de means of, about. It can also mean from, and whatever. So here's the problem for us though, is that we don't always see the de, which then can make it really complicated, because then you think, you're like, let's say this one, let's say I don't even have the de in brackets. You'd be like, sweet, there's no de, I can just write que. But the problem is then, let's just say that that's what we wrote. Let's say you were to say, and you were to follow your qui and que rules, and you were to say, okay, well, que goes right in front of a pronoun, so in theory that would work. You'd say, the pen which I need. And in theory, you'd be like, done, I actually have an equivalent. But you then have to kind of remember where the expression need comes from, and the need is to have a need of. So it's like the pen of which I need is what we're trying to say. Because think of it maybe in terms of maybe French is more formal, and it's not just the pen I need. It's like the pen of which I need. And so because we have que and the avoir besoin de, it's an expression, it's avoir besoin de, we then have to use dont. So it's going to be le stylo dont j'ai besoin. So this one is actually manageable to understand. The problem is in the memorization and being like, okay, which verbs take de and which verbs do not. And the tricky thing is that sometimes, depending on what you're saying, the verb will take a de and sometimes it won't. Like for example, parler, like let's just say I'm just, je parle, I speak. I don't need de, like it doesn't have to exist, just je parle. Maybe I'm saying I speak to you, je parle à toi. And then you're like, I don't get it, this is stupid because here is parler de. Well, it's only parler de if it's to talk about. If I'm just saying I talk to you, I talk loudly, I talk over there, I talk here, there's no about, so then I don't need the, actually I don't need the de. But the minute it's to talk about, the minute you have a de anywhere, it changes things. So again, so same thing here, now it's like the lady who I was talking to you about. So in this case, when dont was here, we would have actually translated dont more as of, like the pen I need, the pen of which I need, right? So in this case, dont then kind of means of which. Here, la dame dont je te parle, because, and again, because it's a je, I want to use que, right? Because que is followed by a pronoun. But the problem is that here, I'm talking to you about. So the minute I have de, I have to use dont. So in this case, it's la dame dont je te parle, the lady who I'm talking to you about. So again, super tricky, but that's basically, you're looking for qui and que, and if you have qui and que, and the minute you see a de, put in dont. Okay. The next one, here's where things get kind of tricky, is we have, now you're trying to debate between, do I use ce que, ce qui, ce dont? You're like, because now everything is unclear. Because remember, anytime we have ce, it means there's something, an element of uncertainty. Que, you know right away. Let's just, again, look back here. This one, I think. It's the girl who is beautiful. Like, we know the girl. But if I wanted to say, like, what is beautiful, I don't know yet, so then I'd have to use siki or sika. So, in this case, we have, and this is again where now you have to remember, is the expression, does it take a de or not? So in this one, it's what I'm talking, all right, what I'm talking to you about. So I actually probably should have written that in English. What I'm talking to you about. So because I know the word is about, it's parler de, that's the expression, okay? So the minute we see the de, it has to be ce dont je te parle. But if it's just what I'm eating, well, it's not what I'm eating about, what I'm eating of, it's just what I'm eating is, I don't know, pizza, then it's just gonna be ce que je mange. And so here's the problem, is that we don't always see the de, because the de then gets implied into here. But I could say like, je parle de, I don't know, l'école, I'm speaking about school, je parle de l'école. So again, because then you'd see the de, and then je parle de l'école. Actually, let me just write this in here, just so you're not confused. Je parle de l'école. Okay, so I'm speaking about school. Okay, the D, right away, that's our instant, like, ding, 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 you have to use dont. Okay, je parle de l'école. This one here, let's say je mange, I don't know, une pizza. Okay, because it's just simply, I'm eating a pizza, and they're like, what are you eating? What I'm eating is pizza. Ce que je mange, da 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 da, I don't need dont. Next one is the expression to be afraid of. So literally it's like to have fear of. So because we have the of, the de, it's gotta be dont. So ce dont j'ai peur. So again, once you actually, like if you had all of the answers written down versus like of all of the different verbs and what they take, it's not a problem. So for you at this point, what you're gonna need to do is have a little list of all the verbs, and not even all, just some of the main verbs that take de, and then you can go from there. And if it doesn't take de, you don't have to worry about dont. It's the minute it's an expression with de, then you have to use dont. So next, what I want, maybe what I want is, I don't know, a bicycle. Well, because I don't have the word about or de, then I'm just gonna have, woo, this is chaos. And I'm just gonna have ce que je veux, c'est une bicyclette. Okay, what I want is a bicycle. So again, this is where the noun is unclear. Unless we've actually specified what it is that we're talking about, we need either ce que or ce dont. So remember, the element of uncertainty is implied in the ce, and then this just grammatically has to match with either the pronoun or if there's a de. Here's the next one. We have the idea, oh no, they're all together. Oh well. We have the idea of lequel, laquelle, lesquels, and lesquels. Think of it as the one or which one. So let's say I'm presenting to somebody wants to come and adopt a dog, and I'm like, I have 5 dogs. You want which one? Then because, let's say I'm only offering them one. I've got 5 and they're only allowed to take one. Then I would say, tu veux lequel? Okay, which one? I have 5 dogs. You want which one? Okay. Maybe I'm offering them 5 dogs and they're allowed to take 2. Then I would say, so again we have our, masculine singular, feminine singular, masculine plural, feminine plural. So again, and I'm saying I've got 5 dogs, you're allowed to take 2. I'd say j'ai 5 chiens, tu veux lesquels? You want which ones? And again, I'm using lequel and lesquels because dog is plural. Okay? But maybe now, again, I'm a farmer and I've got 5 cows and I don't know, I'm giving one away. And I say, j'ai 5 vaches, tu veux laquelle? Because cow is a girl. It has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with je or tu or whatever. It has to do with the thing that I'm actually speaking about. And I'm actually speaking about the cows. I'm offering a cow. So, j'ai 5 vaches, tu veux laquelle? Again, because it's a girl. The cow is a female, so I'm going to have to say laquelle. And it's not plural, it's just one cow, so I'm going to go with this female singular. But maybe now, I've got, again, still 5 cows, but maybe I'm going to give away 2. I'm more generous. I'm going to say, j'ai 5 vaches, tu veux lesquelles? And I'm going to have to use the female form, the plural female form of which one do you want. So that's how this works. The last one we have, and this is kind of tricky, is it's basically the idea of lesquelles, but you're adding like the idea of a in front of it is basically what we're doing down here. So I have, and now here, this is the other predicament you guys are going to face, is you need a little list, a little sheet of all the verbs that take a. So you need a sheet of ones that take de and all the ones that take a, because unfortunately sometimes it's kind of implied in the expression what if it's a de or an a, but you don't always necessarily see it, so it's kind of tricky. So maybe you're saying it's a group I'm interested in, and so you want to, like in theory, we'd want to say, you're like, okay, un groupe, it's masculine, so in theory you're like, okay, I'm going to use like quel because it's a masculine word, but you have to say in. You need the idea of interested in, and that's the expression s'intéresser à. And it's the fact that there's the a, that then you have to have the idea of a written in this word, which defeats the whole purpose. What am I doing? Okay, Q-U-E-L. It's the idea of auquel is written in here, because again, we have the a here, which makes us have to use a word that has an a in there somewhere. So in a way, it's not bad, because you see, let me just make a new one if I can here. The minute you see a word that starts with de, you know you have to use don. So it's kind of nice because you have the D, and they have to match. And if you have a verb that has an a in it, like s'intéresser à, then you're going to have to use, or like a-u-q-u, auquel, because maybe you might have forgotten this, but the word o comes from the idea of a and le. So the minute you see an a, you're like, oh, I have to use one of these guys. And the minute you see, let's go back up here, the minute you see a D, you have to use the word don. So the next one, maybe you're saying it's a class I'm interested in. So again, you see the a, you know you have to use à laquelle and not just laquelle. And so, because this is a female singular word, you're just going to say à laquelle. And there you are, you're correct. Then the next one would be like the types of music I'm interested in. Because types of music is masculine and it's, and it's plural, you're going to say auquel. Auquel je m'intéresse. So the types of music in which I'm interested, which maybe sounds much more formal in French when you translate it back in English than you'd prefer, but it's correct. Les suggestions, and then because suggestion is a girl, we know because generally T-I-O-N, words that end in T-I-O-N are feminine. I'm going to have to use the feminine plural, so O-Q-U-E-L-L, auquel je m'intéresse. So the types of music I'm interested in. So there was one other question I got from another student. It was really good point. They said then, after all of this, they said, then what is quoi? And quoi on its own generally just means what. And I want you to think of this as something that you're not going to use to combine sentences. Like all of these words that you guys have seen, they have to be involved in a sentence somehow. Like they just on their own, like you wouldn't be like, c'est donc. Like, that means nothing. So quoi on its own, though, can. It means what. So if someone were to be like, blah, 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 and you don't understand them, you'd be like, quoi? Like what? That's when we use quoi. We would never say, like, for example, like, la fille quoi j'aime, the girl that I like. No, we can't do that. So just try and think of it as quoi is the beginning of a sentence, and then that is the best way to make sense of this. So good luck. Thanks.